Hey, how's it going, guys? So today we'll be showcasing self-service EC2 provisioning with Ansible Automation Platform. We'll start with a job template that's already governed by RBAC or role-based access control and tied to secured AWS credentials. So from there, I'll show a lightweight survey. In this case, we're only capturing two inputs, the instance name and the region. First, starting off with the template, what that actually looks like, some of the resources utilized within the template itself, the survey, and again, what that looks like on that portion, and of course, the playbook that's utilized in the backend within that template resource. The key takeaway isn't just that we can create an EC2 instance, it's that we can do it in a repeatable, governed, auditable way. This is the Ansible Automation Platform graphic user interface. For this demo, we'll be focusing on the automation controller, which is where you define your automation. So we won't be focusing so much on the other key components besides templates. Jumping into templates, you can actually see that I have various templates specific for different functions within AWS, one being seeing the current state of my infrastructure within my AWS environment, the provisioning EC2 template, which is the prime focus for today's demo, removing the EC2 instances that I just created or whenever I do create those instances, and also want to verify those AWS credentials that I'm utilizing to connect to my AWS environment. I have a separate workflow kind of meshing all these various templates. I won't be showcasing that for today's demo. So I'll go back and actually focus on this particular template. So jumping into the template itself, we can edit the template and see those various resources that we actually are utilizing within the template. So as we can see, the name itself, JH stands pretty much for the initials of my name, AWS Provision EC2, and we gave it a description, right? So we actually have this as a run, and you can pretty much do uh, a job run or a job check. A check is more so a dry run. So the inventory that we're utilizing is actually within our source control manager, which is GitHub in this case. Uh, we aren't really utilizing like a specific IP address or a fully qualified host name from the inventory in itself, just because we're actually orchestrating a few services within AWS. And we also have the project, right? The project is the GitHub repository where we're pulling all these resources from, such as the playbook and the inventory. And for today, before we kind of just dive deep into what that playbook looks like, as you can see, the path is playbooks and then AWS deployment.yaml, which is what we're utilizing for today. And a key component as to what allows this to actually work within Ansible Automation Platform is our execution environment. So this, you can think of it as a stable foundation or a container runtime that consists of a specific version of Ansible Core, Python, and the AWS collection that allows us to orchestrate these various services. Because then again, Ansible is modular, right? Everything you pretty much do to be able to orchestrate other services is by utilizing modules. And since we're accessing AWS via Ansible Automation Platform, we have our AWS credentials stored within Ansible itself. And then, as mentioned previously, we also have that AWS provisioning label just to better organize our various templates. So for the other features and components here, we're not really utilizing them for this specific template. So back to the template tab, we'll actually jump back to provision EC2. Instead of editing it, we'll just click on the actual template itself. And from details, we'll actually jump to the survey tab. So I wanted to note that to actually utilize the survey itself, you have to create the survey question, but before we jump into that, you have to make sure that the survey option is enabled. So here we can see that we have two separate questions being asked when you actually run the template. What is the instance name and select a region. So we'll jump straight into, instead of create a survey question, we'll actually just edit it and you can actually see the various variables that we're using within this survey question. So what is the instance name? That's the question that we're asking. And then the variable name, this would be much more of a placeholder to dynamically change that value within the playbook rather than having a much more static variable like a specific instance name or a specific region name. And then we'll actually have this as a text as an answer type just because the instance name is just a singular value. We won't need multiple choice or any other value for this playbook. And making sure that's required because this is a necessity to be able to actually deploy this instance on AWS. And for this, we'll actually look at the select a region survey also. So if we jump into this, we can see that the question is select a region. Answer variable name is region underscore var. This is that specific environment variable that exists within our playbook to, again, dynamically change that value. Instead of text, just like what we had for the previous survey, we're actually utilizing multiple choice, single select, just because we want to make sure we're selecting one specific region, right? Whether it's US East 1, US East 2, US West 1, US West 2, or any other region that makes a bit more sense for where you're deploying this instance. This is the playbook that we're actually utilizing within our template. So we'll skip a bit of what these values mean, and we'll jump into the ones that we've actually changed and are utilizing within our survey. So two of these variables would actually be the instance name and then the region name. So from what we see here, the only ones that are being replaced are, of course, these two line items. And then down here is the more relevant portion, right? The actual module that we're utilizing to provision the EC2 instance. So here we see that we have amazon.aws.ec2 instance. This is a necessity to be able to actually interact with AWS and orchestrate that service, right? So with those two variables that we're changing, the only ones that we're keeping static here is the key name that specific key we already have created within our AWS environment. The security group also on our networking side, the specific instance type T2 small, and of course the image ID, which would be the CentOS image that we actually have within our AWS catalog. And region, again, we have this as a environment variable and we're registering this as an EC2 instance. So now jumping back into the Ansible Automation Platform, we actually show what that looks like within our AWS instance. I'll jump into my AWS instance to show you guys, hey, I have an empty EC2 instance right now. I don't have anything running, nothing in the back end. I'll show you guys real quickly my key pair, right? I have what I showed previously, EC2 demo 1. This is what I'm using right now. And then back to instances. Back into the Ansible Automation Platform environment, I'll actually just run this template, right? Provision EC2. And here, showcasing what we walked through earlier. So here, we'll actually just do AP demo self service. And then we'll keep it to US East 1 as the region, as the only region that we have for now. And then next, you can see that we have a details page just to confirm that we're utilizing the right resources, everything seems to check out, and that it's replacing those specific variables that we covered earlier. So finish, we'll give this actually some time to run in the back end. So going down the details page, you can see that it ran through the task successfully. It automated and ran that job against the local host rather than a specific IP address or fully qualified domain name. Going down the details page that we actually saw within that debug message, we see EC2 instance AP demo self-service was successfully created in region US East 1 with the instance ID, and of course stay pending because it just got provisioned with that specific IP address of the instance itself. So we'll jump back to that AWS tab. Let's see if we can actually refresh, jump into instance ID. And here we can actually see that the instance name is AAP demo self-service with the same IP address that we saw within the details page, and then that the instance is properly running. And then, of course, the various other resources that are tied to this specific instance. So jumping back into the Ansible Automation Platform environment, we'll actually jump back to templates and just run a few cleanup jobs. So this is why we also have the AWS remove EC2, which is also utilizing a survey in the backend. So I'll also launch this template and I'll select US East 1, run this. This seems to all check out, and then finish that. So I'll just let it run real quick and kind of just glance over the details page. Here we can see that ran successfully against localhost, and it pretty much just removed all those resources we just created, as we can see. So jumping back into AWS, go back to instances. So we could actually refresh this real quick. And as we can see, the instance is shutting down. So jumping back to the actual instance itself, there we go, instance state shutting down. And that's all for this quick short demo. I hope you guys enjoyed it.